A 7-night Caribbean cruise with Royal Caribbean, advertised at $798 per person. The couple who booked it paid $5,340 by checkout. That is a 3.3 times multiplier between what the promotion said and what the bill said. And Royal Caribbean is not even the worst offender on this list. That is just where the data starts. What follows is the math that 4 major cruise lines are counting on you never doing. Each one ranked by the gap between their advertised fare and what Americans over 55 actually pay once the packages, fees, and onboard charges land. Every number comes from fare tracking data covering more than 430,000 sailings, cruise line pricing pages, and documented industry research. Nothing invented, nothing rounded. If you have a cruise booked for 2026, or you are pricing one out right now, stay with this. Let's start at the bottom. Carnival Cruise Line advertises balcony cabin sailings, starting around $500 to $700 per person. For a couple catching a decent sail, that headline number comes to roughly $1,043. Carnival is the most booked cruise line in North America, and that low advertised price is a large part of why. What that $1,043 actually covers is the cabin, the main dining room, the buffet, the pools, and the entertainment. The list of what it does not cover is considerably longer. Effective April 2, 2026, Carnival raised its mandatory daily gratuity to $17 per person for standard cabins. This fee is added to your account automatically every single day, whether you interact with the crew or not. For 2 adults over 7 nights, that is $238 in charges before you have ordered a single drink, connected to the internet once, or booked a single-day trip. Worth noting, this was Carnival's first gratuity increase since 2023, when they moved from $14.50 to $16 per person. The April 2026 increase moved it to $17. The trajectory is $1 per person per year in the standard stateroom category, and nothing in the current industry environment suggests it stops there. If you are planning a Carnival cruise for late 2026 or 2027, the gratuity rate you see today may not be the rate you pay. And then there is the part that did not make the announcement headlines. At the same time as the gratuity increase, Carnival raised its onboard service charge from 18% to 20%. That is the percentage automatically added to every drink you order, every specialty restaurant meal, and every spa treatment. The daily gratuity went up. Every discretionary purchase on the ship got 2% more expensive. Both moves, same moment. If you are wondering how that is even legal, so is everyone else. If you want alcohol on board, Carnival offers the CHEERS package at $82.54 per person per day pre-cruise. That figure already includes the 20% service charge. For 2 adults over 7 nights, that is $1,155, and the cabin rule applies here. If one adult in your stateroom purchases the drink package, Carnival requires all other adults in the same cabin to buy it as well. So if you want it, and your spouse rarely drinks, you are paying $1,155 for both regardless. To break even on that package, you need to consume 5 to 6 cocktails per day, every day, across the full voyage, including port days when you are off the ship for 8 hours. Whether that math works for your vacation is a genuine question worth answering before you click purchase. Wi-Fi runs $23.80 per day on the value tier, $166 for the week on one device. Now the excursions, because this is where the markup becomes difficult to ignore. Carnival's Fury catamaran sail and snorkel in Cozumel, one of their most popular Caribbean day trips, is listed at $88.99 per adult on Carnival.com. The same snorkeling route, the same reef, the same local boats and guides, costs $50 per person when booked directly through an independent operator in Cozumel, a 78% premium for an identical experience. 2 excursions for a couple across 2 ports, booked through Carnival, runs around $356. Book independently, and it is closer to $200. Port fees and government taxes add approximately $410 for a couple on a 7-night Western Caribbean sailing. Final tally for a couple on Carnival in 2026, with drink packages for both adults, 1 Wi-Fi device, 2 excursions, mandatory gratuities, and port fees, $3,369, against a headline of $1,043. That is a 3.4 times multiplier. the widest gap in the mainstream market. The total cost is not outrageous in absolute terms. The issue is the distance from what was advertised. Here is where it gets counterintuitive. Royal Caribbean charges more upfront and ends up costing less overall relative to what they show you. Their base fares for a couple on a 7-night Caribbean balcony sailing average around $1,645. That is $600 more than Carnival before anything else is added. A lot of people see that number and book Carnival instead, but the total math does not end there. Royal Caribbean's gratuity is $18.50 per person per day, raised from $18 in November 2024. For 2 adults over 7 nights, that is $259. The deluxe beverage package runs a fleet-wide median of around $77 per day before the 18% service charge. Once that gratuity lands, you are looking at roughly $90 per day per person, or $1,260 for 2 people over 7 nights. Same cabin rule. 1 adult buys it, all adults buy it. The package covers drinks up to $14 per item, with no daily limit on consumption, which is more permissive than Carnival's 15-drink cap. The break-even on Royal Caribbean's package is 5 to 6 cocktails per day. On a sea day, with 7 or 8 hours of pool time available, that is achievable for some travelers. On a port day, when you leave the ship at 8 a.m. and return at 4 p.m., you have roughly 4 hours of evening time on the ship to make up your daily quota. The port day math is where most drink packages quietly lose money for the people who buy them. Wi-Fi through Royal Caribbean's Voom service runs about $20 per night for 1 device, $140 for the week. The shore excursion markups are comparable to Carnival, and in December 2025, Royal Caribbean opened the Royal Beach Club Paradise Island at Nassau, a private beach experience with day passes starting at $129.99 per person. That is a separately ticketed experience at a port you are already visiting on a cruise you already paid for. If you want to spend the day at their private beach in Nassau, you pay again at the gate. Not great. Total for a couple on Royal Caribbean with both drink packages, 1 Wi-Fi device, 2 excursions, gratuities, and port fees, $4,174. Multiplier, 2.5 times the headline fare. Royal Caribbean costs more in absolute dollars than Carnival, but the proportional gap between their advertised price and your final bill is smaller. The higher base fare compresses the markup multiple. That is not a reason to choose Royal Caribbean. It is a reason to run the full math rather than comparing only the headline numbers, which is exactly what their marketing is designed to prevent you from doing. Before the next line, a quick note. We are building out a full port-by-port breakdown of Caribbean shore excursions with the exact independent operators and what they charge versus what your cruise line sells the same trip for. The savings on a single port day for a couple can run to $150 or more. Subscribe so you catch that one when it lands. MSC Cruises is the line that catches first-time cruisers most off guard, and the reason is entirely structural. MSC has the lowest advertised base fares of any major line sailing from American ports. A 7-night Caribbean itinerary can start as low as $439 per person, which is $878 for a couple. Genuinely the cheapest entry point in the mainstream market. Part of what makes MSC attractive beyond the price is the experience itself. The ships are newer than most of what Carnival deploys on comparable itineraries. The MSC World America, which launched in 2025, is one of the largest cruise ships in the world. The food quality and cabin design get consistently strong reviews. The low fare is not a signal that the product is poor. It is a business model decision about where to recover the margin. MSC raised its daily hotel service charge, their terminology for gratuities, to $17 per person for Caribbean cabins, effective May 11, 2026. For 2 adults over 7 nights, that is $238. And notably, MSC's Yacht Club suites saw a $3 per night increase in the same announcement, moving from $20 to $23 per person per day. If you are considering an upgrade, that tier now carries the highest per-night gratuity rate of any cabin category across any mainstream line. The MSC Premium Extra Beverage Package runs approximately $85 per day on sailings of 4 nights or longer, inclusive of gratuity. For 2 people over 7 nights, that is $1,190. Add Wi-Fi at around $250 for the week, 2 excursions at around $356, and port taxes at roughly $350, and the total for a couple on MSC comes to approximately $3,012, against an advertised fare of $878. That is a 3.2 times multiplier, and it is the most dramatic proportional shock in the market because because the starting number is so aggressively low. A couple who sees $878 and plans a vacation around that figure will encounter a final cost 3 times higher. The math is not hidden, but it requires doing it, and MSC's marketing is specifically designed to show you only the first number. Norwegian Cruise Line runs a different model, and whether it works in your favor comes down to one specific question about how you vacation. Norwegian's base fares for a couple on a 7-night Caribbean sailing run around $1,428. Most Norwegian cruises are sold through their Free at Sea promotion, which bundles a drink package, Wi-Fi, and excursion credits into the fare. On the surface, that looks like the most transparent deal in the market, and compared to the other 3 lines, it actually might be. Pay attention to what Free at Sea actually means, because this is where the math gets interesting. When you receive the drink package through Free at Sea, you do not pay the full standalone price of $109 per person per day. The standalone price on Norwegian is genuinely that high, and if you purchased it outside of a promotion, you would need to drink 11 cocktails daily to break even, which is not a vacation, it is a problem. Under Free at Sea, instead of paying the full price, you pay the mandatory gratuity on the retail value of the package, which works out to approximately $28.50 per person per day. For 2 adults over 7 nights, that is $399 just in drink package gratuities. On top of that, Norwegian has the highest base daily service charge in the mainstream market at $20 per person per day, which adds another $280 for the week. Combined mandatory fees before a single discretionary purchase, $679, higher in raw fee terms than any other line on this list. That number causes a lot of people to close the tab. They should not, because of what happens next. On Carnival or Royal Caribbean, you need 5 to 6 cocktails per day across the full voyage to justify the full price package. On Norwegian's Free at Sea structure, because you are paying only the gratuity rather than the full package cost, the break-even drops to less than 1 cocktail per day. Anyone who orders a morning coffee, drinks a glass of wine at dinner, or has a bottled water at sea is already positive on the package value. That is a fundamentally different calculation than any other mainstream line offers. The package also covers drinks up to $15 per item, with no daily cap on volume, unlike Carnival's 15-drink daily limit. And the Wi-Fi is fully bundled through Free at Sea, with 0 additional charge, which eliminates that entire line item from the total. Norwegian also made one adjustment to the Free at Sea terms worth knowing. Effective March 1, 2026, the drink package no longer works at Great Stirrup Cay, their private island in the Bahamas, unless you have the upgraded Free at Sea Plus tier. If your itinerary includes Great Stirrup Cay, factor that port day into your consumption math separately. Total for a couple on Norwegian in 2026 with Free at Sea, 2 excursions, mandatory fees, and port taxes, approximately $2,998. Multiplier, 2.1 times the headline fare. Norwegian has the lowest markup multiple of the 4 lines. It also has the highest mandatory daily service charge in the market. Both things are simultaneously true. The bundle structure genuinely works in favor of anyone who drinks even occasionally, in a way that no other mainstream line can match. The fees look alarming in isolation. The totals tell a different story. Now, here is the variable that almost nobody factors in before booking, and it changes the math on every line, regardless of which one you choose. Fare tracking data covering more than 430,000 sailings in 2026 shows the following average per-person cost for a 7-night Caribbean cruise by departure port. Port Canaveral, $1,785. Miami, $1,407. Galveston, $1,120. New Orleans, $924. Tampa, $882. Port Canaveral versus Tampa is a difference of $903 per person. For a couple, that is $1,806 in base fare before a single package or fee is added. That is more than the total difference between Norwegian's lowest total and Carnival's highest total on this entire list. The reason is not arbitrary. Port Canaveral gets Royal Caribbean's newest and largest megaships, including Icon of the Seas and Utopia of the Seas, because its proximity to Orlando theme parks drives premium demand. Families bundle a cruise with a theme park trip and pay for the privilege. Tampa cannot physically accommodate modern megaships because of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge clearance restrictions. New Orleans requires navigating the winding, draft-restricted waters of the Mississippi River. Those ports get older, smaller vessels on the same Caribbean routes, and older vessels command lower fares. The ships sailing out of Galveston, Tampa, and New Orleans are not inferior in any meaningful way for a 7-night Caribbean trip. They reach Cozumel, Roatan, Nassau, and Grand Cayman on identical itineraries. The excursions are the same. The beaches are the same. The reef is the same. The fare difference is entirely a function of which ship the cruise line assigns to that port, not what you experience when you get there. If you live in Texas, the Gulf South, Oklahoma, or anywhere within reasonable driving distance of a Gulf Coast port, the combination of lower base fares plus eliminated airfare can reduce the total cost of a 7-night Caribbean cruise by $2,000 to $3,500 for a couple compared to flying into Miami or Port Canaveral. Add the avoided rental car, the avoided airport parking, and the avoided overnight hotel near the Florida port, and the number gets larger still. Galveston alone handled 3.6 million cruise passengers in 2025 and is projecting nearly 3.9 million in 2026 after MSC opened a new terminal there in November 2025. This is not a secondary market. It is the 4th busiest cruise port in the United States, and most of the Americans who book through it save hundreds of dollars per person on fare alone before the trip begins. So here is the honest ranking. Carnival at 3.4 times. Widest markup multiple in the market. Aggressively low base fares. Aggressively large gap between that number and what you pay. The total cost lands around $3,369 for a couple with packages, which is not unreasonable as a vacation expense. The problem is the distance from what was shown. MSC at 3.2 times. The most dramatic proportional shock, because the entry fare is the lowest anywhere. At $878 headline, that becomes a $3,012 bill, is the sharpest gap between perception and reality of any mainstream line. Royal Caribbean at 2.5 times. Higher absolute cost than Carnival, lower proportional gap. The higher base fare works to compress the multiplier. Newer ships, genuine onboard infrastructure, but a drink package that still requires 5 or 6 cocktails daily to justify. Norwegian at 2.1 times. The lowest markup multiple in the market. The highest mandatory daily fees in the market. And the only drink package math that works in favor of people who drink moderately. Because Free at Sea converts the break-even from a high daily consumption requirement to essentially nothing. The cruise industry earned more than 30% of its total revenue from onboard spending in 2025. Not from the fares they advertise, from packages, excursions, fees, and charges added after you book. Onboard spending carries the fattest margins in the business, which is why every line in this market is structured the same way. Get you in with the lowest defensible number, recover the margin once you board. Every line on this list is running that model. The ranking is not about which line to avoid, it is about which gap you are walking into, knowing what you now know, versus which one catches you reading the final statement on checkout morning and wondering what happened to your vacation budget. Before you book any cruise in 2026, run 4 numbers. Gratuity rate times 7 nights times 2 people. Drink package daily cost times 7 nights times 2 people, only if you will genuinely average 5 or more drinks per day. Port fees, which run $150 to $210 per person on most Caribbean sailings, and 2 mid-range excursions per port at the cruise line price, unless you plan to book independently, in which case cut those figures roughly in half. Add those 4 totals to the advertised fare. Whatever that number is, that is your actual vacation cost. If it is more than double what the promotion showed you, it is not because you miscalculated. It is because the promotion was designed to show you half the price. You have the math. Use it before the deposit clears.